Hello students, this is the chapter number 9 Women, Caste and Reform of class 8th, and today we'll start part 1 of this chapter. In this chapter we'll study about the condition of women in the 18th and 19th centuries. After that, about caste discrimination means casteism, and the reforms by the social reformers means what role was played by social reformers to remove all these kinds of social evils against women, and casteism means untouchable people. What was the condition of untouchable people, so called lower caste people? Let's start the chapter. Have you ever thought of how children lived about 200 years ago? If you imagine and if you uh, listen about the life of the people before 200 years ago, including the children, then you will come to know about that the life of the children was very different from that of today's. Nowadays, most girls from middle class families go to school, they study with boys, and on growing up, many of them go to colleges, universities, and take higher education. They also take the jobs after that, and they have to be adults before they are legally married. In India, it is 18 years of age. This is the minimum age for marriage for girls, and 21 years for boys. And according to law, they can marry anyone they like, and from any caste and community. And widows can remarry too. All women, like all men, can vote and stand for elections. It means they can fight election, they can cast their vote, because we adopt the universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise in India. So in this way, all women are equally eligible for voting. Of course, these rights are not actually enjoyed by all. Poor people have little or no access to education, and in many families, women cannot choose their husbands. It is means the main reason behind the status of families, and what kind of conditions are there, what is their living conditions of the people, how much they are educated, literate, etc. But 200 years ago, things were very different. Most children were married off at an early age. It was known as child marriage. Both Hindu and Muslim men could marry more than one wife. In some parts of the country, widows were praised if they chose death by burning themselves on the funeral pyre of their husbands. It was known as sati immolation. Sati immolation. This was very famous practice, and one of the biggest social evils. Women who died in this manner, whether willingly or otherwise, were called sati, meaning virtuous women. Virtuous women. Women's rights to property were also restricted. Besides, most women had virtually no access to education. It means women did not they did not go to school, they were not allowed to get education. In many parts of the country, people believed that if a woman was educated, she would become a widow. This was the thinking among Hindus, and Muslims did not send their girls to the schools because they thought that if they got education, they would be corrupted by reading the Mirza Ghalibs and etc. Romances, right? So they did not send their girls to schools. You can see in this image, this is the image of sati immolation, practice of sati immolation. Sati, painted by Balthazar Solvin, 1813. This was one of the many pictures of sati painted by the European artist who came to India. The practice of sati was seen as evidence of the barbarism of the East, especially in India. So, dear students, in this passage we have discussed about today's life of children, at present, what kind of lifestyle is there of children in India, and what are the differences from the life of children in 18th and 19th century, the beginning of 19th century. So what social evils were there? Child marriage, prada pratha, sati immolation, widows, poor and miserable conditions, illiteracy among women, especially in girl child, right? And other also, so many social evils were there. Differences between men and women were not the only ones in society. In most regions, people were divided along lines of caste. So, casteism was there. Brahmins and Kshatriyas considered themselves as upper castes. So, who were upper castes? Brahmins and Kshatriyas. Others, such as traders and moneylenders, often referred to as Vaishyas, were placed after them. Vaishyas. And then came peasants and artisans such as weavers and potters, referred to as Shudras. So Shudras were at the bottom. At the lowest rung were those who labored to keep cities and villages clean or worked at jobs that upper caste is considered polluting, that is, it could lead the loss of caste status. So this was the ladder, it means hierarchical system in the society from the lower to upper castes. The upper castes also treated many of these groups at the bottom as untouchable. So who were untouchables? The lower castes people were considered untouchables, and they were not allowed to enter temples, draw water from the wells used by the upper castes, or bath in ponds where upper caste bathed. They were seen as inferior human beings, so they were not treated equally, they were not treated well in the society by the upper caste people like Brahmins and Kshatriyas. Over the 19th and 20th centuries, many of these norms and perceptions slowly changed. Let's see how this happened. So dear students, till now we have discussed so what were the social evils, especially in 18th and 19th century in India, including child marriage, widows' poor conditions and miserable conditions, sati immolation, prada pratha, and casteism, right? The miserable lives of untouchable people. Now, working towards change. So, who brought this change? This change, what kind of change? Means the people now started to oppose the social evils like child marriage, widows, poor and miserable conditions, and sati immolations, prada pratha, casteism, etc. So these social evils were opposed by some people, and they wanted to reform the society, they wanted to remove these social evils. So this was known as reformation, social reformation. From the early 19th century, we find debates and discussions about social customs and practices taking on a new character. One important reason for this was the development of new forms of communication. For the first time, books, newspapers, magazines, leaflets, and pamphlets were printed. And what was printed in these materials? Means the material was printed with the ideas, new ideas, modern ideas of freedom, fraternity, equality, etc. So these were far cheaper and far more accessible than the manuscripts that you have read about in class 7th. So ordinary people could read these, and many of them could also write and express their ideas in their own languages. And in the upcoming classes, you will study about Baba Kashiram and Kashi Baba of Kanpur, a mill worker, and Bhimrao Ambedkar, the writings of Periyar, and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Keshav Chandra Sen, etc. All kinds of issues, social, political, economic, religious, could now be debated and discussed by men and sometimes by women as well. In the new cities, the discussions could reach out to a wider public and could become linked to movements for social change. So, dear students, simply due to the cheap reading material, cheap printed material. The people could purchase them like newspapers, magazines, and books, etc. So they read them and they became aware about their rights, about the freedom, equality, and the new modern ideas written by Western writers. And women also started to read the books and they could understand the value of these printed materials. So these debates were often initiated by Indian reformers and reform groups like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, born in 1772 in Radhanagar Gram in near Calcutta and died in 1833. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is also considered the founder of the modern India. He founded a reform association known as Brahma Samaj. Brahma Samaj was established in 1828, right, with the ideas and to spread his teachings and ideas about removal of the casteism, means against casteism. Raja Ram Mohan Roy spread his ideas. He also opposed child marriage. He opposed sati immolation, sati pratha most, because he was completely against this practice. After that, Rajaram Mohan Roy was keen to spread the knowledge of Western education. It means he was in favor of Western education. Why? Because he thought that Western education would bring the awareness among the people and the society will be purified and all kinds of social evils will be removed from the society if we adopt Western education. So he favored Western education in the country and bring about greater freedom and equality for women. So he was in favor of freedom and equality for women. He wrote about the way women were forced to bear the burden of domestic work, confined to the home and the kitchen, and not allowed to move out and become educated. So he wanted to give the education to women. So he favored women education and he also favored women freedom, means women should be allowed to move outside according to their wish, changing the lives of widows. Now, Rajaram Mohan Roy was particularly moved by problems widows faced in their lives. He began a campaign against the practice of sati. As I told you that he was completely against practice of sati immolation. So he focused to remove this very dangerous social evil, and he was well versed in Sanskrit because he was a multilingual person, linguistic person, knew Sanskrit, Persian, and several other Indian and European languages. He tried to show through his writings that the practice of widow burning had no sanction in ancient text, means there is no explanation, no description of these kinds of social evils and practices like sati immolation was not there, not described and not explained in the ancient text of India. By the early 19th century, as you have read in the chapter 7, many British officials had also begun to criticize Indian traditions and customs like sati immolation. They were therefore more than willing to listen to Rajaram Mohan Roy, who was reputed to be a learned man. So finally, in 1829, with the efforts of Rajaram Mohan Roy, sati immolation was completely banned in 1829, and at that time, William Bentinck was the Governor General of India. He was the first Governor General of India, and at that time he was the Governor General of Bengal in 1829. So William Bentinck removed this dangerous social evil, sati immolation, with the efforts and with the cooperation of Rajaram Mohan Roy. So the strategy adopted by Rajaram Mohan Roy was used by later reformers as well. Whenever they wished to challenge a practice that seemed harmful, they tried to find a verse or sentence in the ancient sacred text that supported their point of view. They then suggested that the practice as it existed at present was against early tradition. So those kinds of early traditions were opposed by social reformers. For example, figure 3, hook swinging festival. This is hook swinging festival. You can see some people are swinging. In this popular festival, devotees underwent a peculiar form of suffering as part of ritual worship. With hooks pierced through their skin, they swung themselves on a wheel in the early 19th century when European officials began criticizing Indian customs and rituals as barbaric. And rituals like barbaric, and this was one of the rituals that came under attack. You can see in this image. So, dear students, we have studied till now. This is the image of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. He established Arya Samaj in 1875, founded the Arya Samaj, and this was the organization that attempted to reform Hinduism. For instance, one of the most famous reformers, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So we are talking about some more reformers like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar used the ancient text to suggest that widows could remarry. So Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar worked and focused on the remarriage of widows. His suggestion was adopted by British officials, and a law was passed in 1856. Widows Remarriage Act. It was called Widow Remarriage Act 1856. You have to remember this act. Those who were against the remarriage of widows opposed Vidyasagar and even boycotted him. But this act was passed, and after that widows were allowed to remarry. By the second half of the 19th century, the movement in favor of widow remarriage spread to other parts of the country. In the Telugu-speaking areas of Madras Presidency, Viresalingam Pentulu, you have to remember the name, Viresalingam Pentulu formed an association for widow remarriage. So he also favored widows remarriage. Around the same time, young intellectuals and reformers in Bombay pledged themselves to working for the same cause. It means they also worked for widows remarriage. In the north, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, he founded Arya Samaj in 1875. He was also in opposition and against the social evils like casteism and rituals in Hinduism and widows' miserable lives, child marriage, etc. So yet the number of widows who actually remarried remained low, but this was the reform, means that was the new practice was started after the so many reformers' efforts. Those who married were not easily accepted in society, and conservative groups, means those people who used to follow traditional ideas, were known as conservatives. So these conservative groups continued to oppose the new law. Girls began going to school. This topic we'll discuss in the next video. And till now we have discussed about some social evils regarding women and some kinds of casteism. So we'll discuss about casteism in detail in the next video. So dear students, read from textbook and try to understand this chapter by watching this video again. Thank you. Have a nice day.